welcome back. So what we're intending to do at this point in time is to have just a little bit of a panel discussion with our panelists. I've invited the presenters, Dr. Niels Bosma, Dr. Stephen Hill, but I've also invited Professor Mohammed Azam Roomi, who's part of the GEM Saudi Arabia team, and Professor Maribel Guerrero, who is the team leader of GEM Chile and is on the GERA board. And then we also have Ms. Khawla Hammad, whom you heard from earlier as our resident entrepreneur today. And I'm just going to have a little bit like an informal, I call it a fireside chat, just to kind of get some impressions, some reactions about the report, and then to understand a little bit more about GEM's process of converting these global reports into nationally relevant reports. So I hope you enjoy the chat. Afterwards, we are then going to pass straight into the launch of the GEM UAE National Report, which is a very important part of this morning also. So thank you. Okay. I'd like to, all of this, I think, what's going on here today starts and ends with entrepreneurs, So I'm going to start this fireside chat with our entrepreneur. We have actually named the report Opportunity Amid Disruption. And it's very interesting to hear your speech this morning because, in a sense, it's a little bit of a delicate subject, isn't it? You're in counselling and it's mental health. It is opportunity, for sure, to create a new business. But it is also a kind of a social crisis that you were describing as well. So I would really be interested in hearing the context within which you've been moving, how you've been managing this opportunity, if you like, amid disruption, and whether some of the things that you heard of in the presentations this morning resonated with you as an entrepreneur.
Well, thank you again for having me on this panel. Definitely, I think the highlight of the report to me was highlighted that 2 out of 3 entrepreneurs that start are men, and right now, and this is something I think. I have personally been seeing change in. I encounter a lot of students who are participating in incubator programs through universities, and young entrepreneurs, girls who really are interested in making a difference and have that kind of spirit to start their own venture. So I believe one thing we're going to start witnessing in the next few years is the rise a number of female entrepreneurs in the UAE. Now, going back to the opportunity as Takalam, for us, I mean, being virtual was the easiest thing as we started Takalam. And the pandemic, again, gave us the platform to excel in a way when things turned virtual in terms of work, schools, even healthcare services. So it was much easier for us to seize the opportunity and build on this thing that we've been seeing. I would say a challenge that I'm still, in my opinion, still something that we continue to work on, although this has changed since the pandemic started, is again the social stigma. And we saw a lot among our users that the number in terms of clients is much higher when it comes to female versus male. In our society, obviously, by default, you have a certain perception about mental health, and then about men, how they should express their emotions and how they should feel in certain situations. And, you know, even at a young age, boys are taught to act like men. And this is something, obviously, that could backfire down the line. So trying to increase this number and trying to bring in attention to men is one of the things that we really would like to work on more heavily in the coming few years.
Do you actually think that the COVID-19 pandemic has in some way transformed mindsets as regards mental health?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, because of the, the alarming numbers after the pandemic has started, people are scared of the unknown. There's high level of anxiety. Some have lost their jobs. Some have lost their loved ones. So, and being isolated, working from home, job burnout is one of the mental health challenges also that has been identified. Mm-hmm. So trying to manage and cope with all of these changes has been very difficult. And taking an action and looking at ways to mitigate a future mental health crisis is important.
Yes.
So the earlier we start and the more players we have, whether they're startups, private sector companies, governments, is going to definitely help minimize the impact and mitigate the problem as much as possible.
Right. I mean, one of the, my area of expertise is in sustainability and corporate sustainability, meaning social responsibility as well. And there is an acronym that you may be familiar with, which is VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And this actually existed pre-COVID, but what I think has happened now is that we have accelerated this VUCA world within which we live. What I'd like to do now is actually do a quick round with the authors, because we have 4 of the authors of the, well, actually 5, including me, but I'd like to hear from you. I'll just ask the same question of each one of you, a quick round, one sentence each, 2 sentences. What did you feel was the most challenging about writing this year's global report? Challenging or different, or, what's salient? So can I start with the lead author, Stephen Hill? Thank you.
There are lots of challenges in
producing
this report. But
yeah.
For me, from this massive amount of data, how do we pick out what's important? And I'm very much aware of selection bias, that there's a lot to say, there's a lot of possibilities, and how do we choose things to write about in each individual report? There are themes that appear every year. Gender is certainly one of them. But there are some things that stand out in different years. So how do we get the balance right? Okay. We'll come back to this, I'm sure.
Yes. Niels, your view.
Yeah, indeed, it's always challenging to write a global report. So I've been involved in quite a few of them, and also special reports. Yeah, I think what stands out, and is also since in recent years we've been measuring the motivations of entrepreneurs in a different way. And what we kind of know, but not everybody is assuming, is that there are many different, but also motivations happening at the same time among the entrepreneurs. So they are also really keen on improving the world around them, maybe small circles, maybe bigger circles, and at the same time pursuing these opportunities. So that, I think that is coming out really of the report. So in some circles, people still think that entrepreneurs are really out on making a financial profit. We also see that they're very committed to social impact as well as environmental impact. So we will probably get back to that later this afternoon. But indeed, when you speak to entrepreneurship, we know this, but I don't think everybody in like governments actually realize the extent to which this is happening. So very committed to the community and to create value for others. So that's I think what really stands out in the data.
Okay, well, that's interesting, and we hear that through what Khawla has been telling us today, this commitment from entrepreneurs. Maribel, when you took an interesting role with the Global Report in that you were combing through the entire thing, and contributed to the executive summary. And so what did you find was maybe a little bit different or unusual, if anything, about this particular, in this unusual time? Yeah.
Right. Well, sometimes it's very difficult to pick some interesting trends, or even though thinking what is the main difference or contribution. But I mean, in my opinion, I think that, for example, the previous report that we presented last year captured, for example, the first 8 months of the pandemics, and this report captured the effect of the difference month, almost 1 year in the entrepreneurial activity across the world. Yeah. So for me, it's like the GEM has always, we know, is like one of the highest reports around the world that provide information about the entrepreneurial activity. So, and this is, I believe that this is the only one that captured the essential effects of the pandemic in different trends. Okay. And I believe that, for example, one of the most interesting trends that captured my attention is the role of the youngest population, because nowadays it's like if we analyze the different trends, we observe that, for example, at least in the country where I am leading this report, in the Chilean context, the young population has a strong participation this year in contrast with our previous years. Yes. So, and I believe that this is an interesting point because it's like it has a role also as a social researcher. For me, one of the scholarly impacts as a researcher is try to contribute through teaching and supporting the entrepreneurial mindset in my students. So I think that this is the most interesting thing for me.
Okay, very, very relevant, very interesting. And Professor Roomi, have you, as you were writing, maybe you would like to talk about your particular chapter and
yes, I will.
Outline some of the challenges for you.
Yes, I will. But the red thread of inquiry in this year report was diagnosing COVID-19 impact on entrepreneurship. And I think, for me, that was fascinating, that yes, there has been an impact of COVID on entrepreneurship. But this year, we saw that entrepreneurs, they bounced back. Total entrepreneurial activity has increased. Mm-hmm. The economies which were suffering last year, they have shown the total entrepreneurial activity has improved in those economies. Yes. So what an amazing bouncing back capability and capacity of entrepreneurs is, yes, even in these kind of circumstances, which were unprecedented. Yes. It never happened on this planet, at least in our lifetimes. But still, entrepreneurs have that amazing capability and capacity. And that has definitely fascinated me while working on the report with all of you. This was one of the main things. In addition to that, I also realize that there is so much for policymakers to think about and then work about it as well. And the main thing, which is the risk of failures. Well, like while I was doing the report and I was reading it, I was privileged enough to read it before anyone, like as an author. So risk of failure is still there. There are economies who have done very good. Total entrepreneurial activity has increased in some of those economies, but perceptions and attitudes are really high. But still, people are reluctant to take a plunge. And that risk of failure needs to be taken care of, and policymakers can do a lot in this regard.
Yeah, they can alleviate.
These
for sure.
are two of my observations
Yes.
or the things which attracted me.
And just a question for you, Khawla. So you have a lot of direct interaction with your clients. Do you find that there are entrepreneurs in there? Would you in any way be able to give us an idea of what their frustrations are, or how they have been reacting to this crisis that we've been going through? Or is it you can also say that would be difficult to assess, but I love your view on that.
Yeah. I mean, in general, taking that leap of faith and starting a company and trying to prove and get validation from the beginning is very, very, takes a mental toll on you.
Yes.
And as an entrepreneur, there is always, a challenge, and there is a problem that you're trying to solve. And along the way, the fact that you are diving so deep into the venture, you lose track of your own well-being, you lose track of your own social interactions. So having that boundary set up from the beginning is kind of hard, because you're so passionate about making something, building something, and at the same time you forget about yourself. For us at the beginning of the pandemic, again, we wanted to offer, as part of Hub 71 in Abu Dhabi, we offered kind of a booth for entrepreneurs to come and just talk at any point throughout the day. And we noticed, the number there was very interesting, because, could be because of the nature of the entrepreneurial ecosystem being more males versus females.
Females, yeah.
So there were a lot of guys coming to talk, and they would. I think what makes it different is that it is private, and they get to talk at their own convenience, and it's a place where they can express their challenges and find ways to cope with the stresses. So stress is the number one, challenge, obviously, that they go through. And we just rolled out another project, the same concept with Munshaat in Riyadh. And again, the idea is to offer mental health support for entrepreneurs in Riyadh. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. Being coming from both sides, I can see where the challenges are. And a lot of work needs to happen there. And if we can establish actually something to do with mental well-being and well-being in general for entrepreneurs as part of the ecosystem everywhere, I think that would add a great value.
Well, I find it really fascinating that you have been setting up these support systems for entrepreneurs, and that I think at this stage in time, this period in history, it's absolutely essential. Now I'm going to, as a lead-in to the next part of the event, I'd like to have some perspectives from the GEM authors here, who represent national teams, on how the global results which you heard about here today actually convert into national relevant reports. Because, in a sense, today is really just the beginning of what GEM has to offer. During the year, we have multiple national level reports coming out, up to 50. Every single team that has participated in the global report will get going now after this event on writing a national report. In fact, many are already well advanced with that effort. And so I'm going to ask maybe you, Niels, so you're a very long-standing member of GEM. Maybe you could make a general commentary on this conversion to national level reports and, a bit of your experience on working with some of them.
Yeah, sure. So maybe then it's best to link this to the Netherlands, where I'm from, and I've also been part of the Dutch GEM team for a while. In the beginning, really the benchmarking was most important. How does your country compare to others? But then at some point, the progress over time becomes more important, and also indeed moving from TEA to other measures. So the early stage entrepreneurship activity was an important measure at the beginning, and then also our national government had kind of targets which included TEA to be in the top 5 of Europe. But now you see that the intention is moving more towards ambitious types of entrepreneurship. We noticed that in the Netherlands the trend has been increasing for TEA, but not for ambitious entrepreneurship. So this has been raised as a concern. So that was kind of an important way for Dutch policymakers to get track of the results of GEM, but also information they really didn't know in advance. For instance, we have data on informal investors. This is really also a unique type of data. The Dutch government supposed that they had some knowledge about this because of the tax deduction schemes that were in place for investors.
Yes.
There was a kind of a regulation in place that if you invested in someone other's businesses, you could deduct tax. So they thought they had this number, but it was seriously underestimated because it's that informal that people don't even report that. But it's even though it's a small number per investor, it's actually quite a big sum and very important for new initiatives that could lead to important firms. So these types of information have also helped policymakers. Yeah, and like I said, also when discussing the report, it's also a means to get people together and talk about this, because I think that's crucial to really see, okay, what are the bottlenecks, how are they perceived by, not only by entrepreneurs, but also stakeholders like financiers, incubators, etc. To jointly see, okay, this is really what is driving entrepreneurship in a positive way, but these are the bottlenecks that we need to work on. So I think that also is important.
Okay, thank you. And Steve, you have actually also worked with the GEM Lebanon team. As we know, Lebanon has had its challenges. For the moment, we don't have a GEM Lebanon team anymore. We hope to into the future, and that things will go better for Lebanon. But maybe you could just give the same question, really, from your experience.
Oh, I probably better not say too much about Lebanon, not least because my wife is in the audience.
Well, hello. Yes, but I guess I mean mainly, you were engaged in that process of converting the global report.
Okay. There is one thing that I think is really important. Okay, and I've been looking at the GEM Global results for years. I've worked with 2 national teams. And year after year, I know the pandemic's important and I know financial crises come and go. But year after year after year, and I mentioned this earlier, entrepreneurial education in schools comes bottom. What are we doing?
Yes.
What do we mean by entrepreneurial education in schools? We ask about 3 things. We ask about teaching pupils to think creatively. We ask about learning how economies work. And we ask about preparing for the possibility that entrepreneurship might be an option. If we're not teaching those things in schools, what are we doing? So right now, I'm on a mission. And I think GEM should be on a mission. And here's my challenge to the national teams. Look at those results for your economy. I have to say the UAE doesn't do badly. But look at those results for your economy. Far too many economies that entrepreneurial education in schools is not sufficient. And ask your policymakers, what are we going to do about this? Why aren't we building the foundations for the future entrepreneurs? The entrepreneurs that we have are succeeding despite this lack of entrepreneurial education in schools. Think of what we could be doing. This is where GEM can make a real difference. That's my challenge to schools.
This is a call to action. Yeah. So, Maribel, GEM Chile. Yeah. Maybe you can sort of, a report from the trenches,
yes.
if you like.
Yeah, well, as Niels mentioned before, for example, when we translate this global report to the national report, the global report allows, for example, to do benchmarking with the countries of reference in the region, you know. But also GEM Chile has a specific particularity, has other other specific national teams like Mexico or Spain, that we have a regional teams that provide also information at the regional level. So, and this allows, for example, to do different benchmarking also across the regions. And based on that, for example, we have a traditional relationship with the Minister of Economy, that every time that we present in the report, they come in and discuss it, and as well as we have different interactions with them for promoting or developing different programs for supporting entrepreneurs, because they are particularly interested in how to promote the entrepreneurial ecosystems across the regions. But also, for example, Chile is a very challenging also country. And for example, this year we are facing, after the 2019 social movement, there is one particular challenge that Chile is facing, that is the transformation in a new constitution. So in this year, in 2021, we have the opportunity to introduce a little questions with the national expert surveys in order to understand what the experts, for example, across the country, understand what is the role of entrepreneurship and how the entrepreneurship could be integrated in this new challenge that is the writing of a new constitution. So, and this allows capturing interesting information that we are starting a discussion with different agents and different, obviously, actors of the ecosystem. But now we also have another challenge, because there is a new government that started in March. So, and this is a new transition that we have the challenge to convince and also to work with them how we can translate these indicators into policymakers, so actions. Yes. So this is the point.
So again, you know, our VUCA world.
Exactly.
Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And that's the report from the trenches from Maribel. Thank you very much. And now we're moving to you, Roomi, who represents Saudi Arabia here.
Yes. Neil said a very important point, that whenever the global report is launched, there is a comparison that which country did what and how we can compare countries, and it attracts a lot of media attention as well, because there is a story and some people want to prove that they have done better than the other countries. So when we started in 2016 in Saudi Arabia, the first thing which I thought about, and my team members, that we have to educate policymakers that yes, international comparison is good, but the most important thing is that where we are now and where we have to move on. So I was fortunate enough that we were able to meet some policymakers and we were able to convince them, and we said, this is where we are. And we need to reach here. And since 2016, year on year, we have been improving. And the only reason is that we are lucky that the new government, the regime, and the policymakers, they are listening to the numbers and figures which we are giving them every year, because there is a reliability and validity in GEM data. So they have made sure that even the ministry is looking at the numbers which we are giving them, and they look at it. So if you look at it in for example, societal perception and attitudes, we were in low 70s, but now in 2016 and 2021 we are in high 90s, and then in national framework context as well, we were quite low at that time, and we have improved over a period of time, be it government policies or financing, for example, or funding. And there are a number of areas where we have improved year on year So yes, you talked about Netherlands and Finland, but you missed Saudi Arabia. We are at number 4 in national. And we were not at number 4 a few years ago. We have improved year on year. And yes, we are looking at most of the Saudi entrepreneurs, they used to come here in the UAE to have their businesses 5 years ago. Now I'm proud to say that yes, we have not changed it 180, but the things have changed over a period of time. And there are still a number of things which needs to be done. And I am proud to say that GEM KSA is contributing towards that improvement because policymakers are listening to us.
So this is an absolutely great note to end on, is that policymakers are listening to GEM. GEM has a great deal of credibility, as you can see from the witness accounts here, with policymakers. And if you are listening online, even today, and you know that your country does not have a GEM country team or national team, please, do think about seeing whether you can constitute one, because it will have effects. I mean, Dr. Roomi was telling me last night that it's 6 years that you've been in Saudi Arabia, and there is absolutely no doubt that GEM has been having a substantial impact on policy making in Saudi Arabia, and the results are there. So thank you very much to the panel. We'll end with that. It was just to give you an idea. It's a great lead-in to the national report launch for UAE. And yes, just one round of applause, perhaps, and thank you.